Welcome back, guys. Before we jump into this week's episode, I have a big favor to ask. If you get 2 minutes to vote for the Beyond Condition podcast as the Listener's Choice Award over on Apple Podcast, this would truly mean the world to me. I'm going to pop the link in the episode description, and I'm also going to put a link on my link tree that you can find on Instagram in my bio. Honestly, every single one of you that listens and has been through this journey with me as a podcast host, it genuinely means the world to me. And the podcast would not be where it is today without you listening every week. You truly are my motivation to continue being in your ears and supporting your journey every single step of the way. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we have until August the 29th, 2024 to put the votes in to see if we can get the Beyond Condition podcast into the Listener's Choice Award. Welcome back, guys, to the Beyond Condition podcast, the voice of bodybuilding, and we are in for episode number 5 of our Female Truths of Bodybuilding Roundtable series. As always, our saying, let's give the people what they want. Sara and Romana join me, and we welcome the longest serving IFBB Pro. So all of the listeners, guys, listen to that again, because this episode is going to be full of so much valuable information. And before, of course, we get stuck in, Wendy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
It's super cool. Now, I worked out earlier that with all 4 of us, it's over 60 years worth of bodybuilding.
Mad, isn't it?
That's crazy, that, isn't it?
Yeah. It's
Wendy carrying about 60 of those.
I feel about 60 today.
Oh dear.
So, Marna, how many days out are you for the listeners? Obviously, this will be released in August, but we want to know where you're at now.
So tomorrow,
Doesn't even know,
a week out.
And this was a bit of a surprise, or a bit, not a secret as such, but you wanted to sort of keep it under wraps a little bit, didn't you?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of, I wasn't sure my knee was going to hold out. So it was like, well, we dieted for a wedding and a holiday, and it went better than expected. So whilst we were away, we were like, right, okay. And originally had like 4 shows lined up. And then I did the maths and I was like, fucking hell, that's going to cost like 10 grand. Can't afford that. So, yeah, we reduced it down to 2. So I'm doing Atlanta a week Saturday. So I think that's the 13th.
Yeah.
And then Chicago on the 19th. And then we've got 5 days in Chicago before we fly home. So, yeah, very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is Chicago still a Tim Gardner show, Romana? Tim
Sorry?
Gardner.
Yeah, Atlanta. One of them's Wings of Strength. One of them's Tim Gardner, and I can barely remember which day which show's on. To be fair.
Yeah, Linda runs Atlanta, doesn't she? And Tim Gardner runs the Chicago one.
Yeah.
Really good show to do.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've heard the Tim Gardner shows are really good to do.
Yeah, you get really well looked after at the Tim shows.
Yeah, I really wanted to do a Wings of Strength and a Tim Gardner show, so we've hit both of those. And then potential for, if we've got the funds, and it will be a ball ache flying back out for Texas, but we just couldn't afford to stay out there because it was going to be Atlanta, Chicago, Tampa, and Texas. But there's like 2 weeks between Chicago and Tampa, and you just can't. The Airbnbs are ridiculous in Tampa, and staying in Chicago, there's so many places that it's like you shouldn't go there. You shouldn't go there. It's rough.
Yeah.
Like having our luck, we'd just end up getting mugged if we're there too long.
I think that raises a valid point, actually, with when you compete for a number of years, like you said, you've always wanted to do one of those shows. I think as a competitor, sometimes it's important to, look at what's coming up and what shows you want to do. Now, of course, we have to follow criteria and we have our category, but I think that we can, actually, as we progress through the ranks, etc., we can really achieve things that are like something within your heart, if that makes sense. So it makes it even more of an experience.
Yeah, and there's we've talked about the UK show as well, and that's obviously like Sarah will know. We sat there at the athletes meeting, being like, you don't put WPD on in the UK,
Mm.
and it's like I really want to do it, but I don't know timing wise whether it'll be right or not. We'll see.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? I think a lot of us already had kind of like our plans in place, like to have an off season for myself. Obviously, you've obviously come in to do the state shows. Like, I think it's if we knew about this, if it was like a regular show, like for example, if it was still at the same place, does really well this year, still at the same place next year, then I would 100% do it. But because a lot of the athletes already know what they're doing come January, it just doesn't, I don't know. I'm doing it for I'm not doing it for other reasons, which I won't obviously say on this podcast, could be a little bit controversial, but like I just think a lot of us had a lot of our plans in place, and once those plans are done, then you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure.
It's because of where we were dieting to fit into a dress I bought for a wedding and for a holiday. And then decided to do the shows. It was like, exposure wise, there's not really much else around that September time for WPD.
Yeah.
So if we're thinking duration on cycle, that could potentially, if I'm lucky enough to qualify for the O again, we're looking at a very long time on cycle, and we're just both not willing to do that.
Absolutely.
So it all depends what happens in the next couple of weeks, I guess.
Yeah, take it show by show, innit, Ray? You know,
Yeah, exactly.
There's also those elements of sometimes like you've sort of fallen into a prep, as it were, because it went better than you thought. And sometimes I often think when the edge is taken off and it's not so, pressured for a date, there is elements of maybe that's more of an enjoyable prep, and it's like, well, actually this is sort of come about and I didn't know it was gonna, and I don't know, obviously normally we timeline, that's how we do as bodybuilders, but I think it's a good example of, for yourself, Mana, and saying you've really enjoyed this prep as a whole and sort of comparisons to other preps as well.
I mean, I'm not having to balance prep with working.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's perspective, isn't it? It's like when you're trying to be in a calorie deficit, do your cardio, do your training sessions, and then you add in night shifts, 12-hour night shifts to the mix. It's like, oh, you're awake from like 1 p.m. until 8 a.m. the following day, and you've still only got whatever you may have at that point calorie wise. I don't know, ballpark 1,700 calories. You've still only got that amount of calories to last you from 1 p.m. till 8 a.m. And anyone that's done night shifts, tiredness obviously increases your hunger hormones. It makes you crankier. It makes the brain fog even worse. You're just fucking dragging already. And then it's the wee hours of the morning and you're just like, I mean, the one benefit is I didn't tend to get hungry from about 1 a.m. So that did help with my eating window, but it doesn't help with the brain function when you're trying to like actually talk to people or manage people or deal with patients. So perspective wise, this prep, all I've had to focus on is the prep itself and my coaching clients. It's just, it's so much easier when all you've got to do is tick your prep boxes and do your check-ins, rather than thinking, oh, I've got to actually speak to this person. Even doing the disability assessor role when I was prepping for the Olympia, like I was on the phone at times for 3 hours at the time, and you can't leave to go to the toilet. You can't sort of say, oh, I'm really sorry, I'll call you back, or I'm just going to pop you on hold. So you can't drink. What do you want to do when you're on prep to fill that hunger hole? You want fluid. And you want coffee to wake you up, and you can't have it because half an hour later you're like crossing your legs trying not to wet yourself whilst you're listening to this person's woes. It's so literally it was all I do get up, walk the dog, go and do my fasted cardio, come back, meal one, try and have a nap, train, and then by about 4 o'clock everything's done. I can just chill out and just sit and rest and watch my iPad, and it's worked really well.
For sure. I actually had a conversation literally yesterday with a lady that's contemplating doing a prep, and I was sort of trying to describe that brain fog that you mentioned, and how you can feel maybe sometimes you can be a bit snappy with people around you, or if people are trying to impart their knowledge on you, that you're too lean, shouldn't be doing that. And you know, these conversations that we have, and until you've done it, and this is sort of how I summarized it, until you've done a prep, it's quite hard to tell someone how that actually feels within you. And I was trying to explain, you know, the communication with her other half and people around her as much as possible. Maybe they're not going to get it fully, but that's something we always talk about on the pod, is the communication. And yeah, until you get to those depths, it's like, and every prep's slightly different. I'm sure you'll all agree.
There was one point Dan and I were in the gym together, and he's there just like trying to have a chat, and I had to say to him, I was like, I'm really sorry, I don't have the energy to have a conversation about, I can't even remember what it was, in my rest periods, because I'm saving my energy for my set. It was like, I didn't have the brain capacity to focus on what I was trying to do in the set and have a conversation with him in my rest periods.
Yeah.
And it, like, bless him, he's been so patient, because I've been just like, I don't really get snappy. My patience is really thin. Like, even stuff like just Manu's claws, the dog's claws on the laminate flooring, it's like just like nails down a chalkboard. Or if I can see his tail wagging in the corner of my eye at sort of 7 o'clock when I'm trying to chill out, I'll get like I know that I'm being edgy for no reason, and then I know that I'm really, really quiet. But Dan's happy as long as I'm not like chewing his head off about anything. And it's like, yeah, there's been a couple of like, will you please just fucking wipe the surfaces after you've done so, you know, it's little things like that. Where when I'm not in prep, it would be, do you mind just giving that a bit of a wipe? It's like, for fuck's sake, I've literally just done that. Can you please wipe up your EEAs after you've chucked them everywhere? It's like, there'll be a little bit of an irate reaction, but it's not like, you're a fucking cunt this, you're a fucking cunt that, you know. It's
That's one of those things though, isn't it? It's like, and if Dan gets it, but if your partner literally knows nothing about bodybuilding, and then suddenly you turn into this prep robot, they're like, do you not like me anymore? Like, what the hell is going on? Unless you can give some level of insight into sort of how you feel, I guess. But that's sometimes hard because your tunnel vision is in, and you're like, well, it's fucking hard, but I don't care. I'm going to do it. And you get in these sort of thought processes. Now, I want to ask all of you in this episode as well, for first timers that listen, that's something, of course, the communication that's important. But maybe we start with you, Wendy, with, you know, when someone's first going into a prep or even contemplating a prep, do you have any advice that you give when you speak with people that are like, I want to do what you do?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you say you have to communicate with your partner. That's really important, because if your partner isn't a bodybuilder, like my wife wasn't when I met my wife, she wasn't a bodybuilder. And I had to explain to her, right, I'm going to get tired, I'm going to get probably distant, this has to be routine, blah, blah. But if you don't communicate, then they're going to blame themselves. And then that's going to make a miserable prep even more miserable. And then just advice is to listen to that one person, because you know what it's like, social media now. I mean, when I started out, I was lucky there was no social media, but now it's like flipping heck. Your coach telling you one thing, your training partner's telling you another thing, and your partner's telling you something else. I think, fucking hell, like, it's too much information out there sometimes. So especially if you compete abroad as well, like if you go abroad, do your first pro show, you see all the athletes doing different things to you, and it makes your head go a bit funny, and you're thinking, am I doing this right? Am I doing that right? And you start to question your own methods and stuff. But stick to your plan, stick to your formula, and do what's right for you. Don't start, chasing what other people are doing, and communicate. Basically, that's and be realistic as well, because if you haven't got the best genetics and you're thinking, right, I'm going to want to go get my pro card this year, well, you need somebody as well who can be honest with you and say, look, you can't make chicken out of chicken soup. You can't, like you can be the best what you can be, but don't expect to be, to go and get a pro card for like first time out if you haven't got that, that structure, that setup.
Yeah.
For sure. It's it's so important, because also tying into all of what you just said there, the social media, etc., you know, you do get cheerleaders, you get people that do not understand competitive bodybuilding. And we've spoken about this before, girls, where it's like, you know, there might be people at the gym going, you're going to win the show, you look great, and they're trying to be nice. Like, it's not necessarily a bad thing per se, but that can lead to all levels of this sort of delusion and what you expect from a show. And we know you never know who's going to turn up, and you can literally only do your best. But that is quite difficult when you're getting all of these cheerleaders around you saying, you know, you're going to win, or you do the show and they say you should have won, and then that again, it's another tangent. But there's a lot around who you are associating with, and if they even know what they're talking about, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, your mum always thinks you should win, shouldn't it? Like, you
I
Petty should
agree.
win that show.
My mum just thinks I shouldn't be doing this.
Oh, that's another story. But like everyone like has people who blow smoke up their ass, and most times are not the intent, right? That the mean well, like people at the gym, they saw you looking brilliant, you're going to win, but like you say, you don't know who's going to turn up. But that works both ways as well, because if you go there and then you start thinking, I'm not good enough, then already you're beaten. So you have to go there and believe that you can win as well. You know, if you've done your homework, you've done the work, you stand on the stage and you've got every chance to succeed as much as they do, just because they're so and so. If you're good enough, at the end of the day, you know, like, you're going to hold your own. But that self-belief, usually I find from a lot of UK people, especially females, the self-belief drops. They get on the stage, or they get backstage, or they beats meet. Then I've done it myself, and you just look around and you think, oh shit, I'm tiny, because I was never the biggest on stage. I used to give away like 6-7 kilo on stage, and at the end I realized that doesn't matter. But when you see them in the tracksuits at the athletes meeting, the clothes, I think they're going, oh my god, I'm tiny, I should, maybe I'm in the wrong class. But no, you can't think like that. You have to believe in yourself and know that, like, I'm as, like, they need to worry about me without being big headed. Like, you know, stick to your path. You know, I tried to play the size game a few times, and I was like, it's not me. My frame's not that big.
Yeah.
Then when I played my own game, the condition, the symmetry, then okay, now we're talking. And then I stopped worrying about what they look like and realized that, guess what? I can't change what they look like. I can only worry about me. So
I
all that
remember
stress and stuff and energy is gone when it should have been on yourself.
I had this
I remember having a complete freak out in Spain in the gym, because there were all the other WPD competitors were there training at the same time, and I was like, fucking hell, her delts, look at her abs, you know, just utterly anxious anyway, and just freaked myself out thinking, well, I'm going to be lucky if I even get to be able to perform my routine. And then obviously ended up winning it. It's like, you can't, seeing somebody either in their tracksuit or in a gym or on Instagram is not comparable to what it looks like on stage, stood next to other people.
I had this discussion with someone the other day, just being like, oh, am I going to be big enough? And I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm one of, like you, Wendy, I'm one of the smallest on stage. Like, I remember rocking up to Legions, and I went and got that athlete's kit, and one of the guys was like, I think you need to go a size smaller, love. And I was like, all right then. And then I came second. Do you know what I mean? Like, and there were bigger women in the squad, in the lineup. That was like 21 women came second. Like, it just says a lot. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I said, like, aesthetics and symmetry are all taken into account. Condition, like, someone could be an absolute mass monster but place last, and yeah, more aesthetic queens could come through. Do you know what I mean? So absolutely, I think a lot of people think it is just size alone, when that's not necessarily the case.
It's not, and it depends on the show as well, because I think in the States, well, again, it depends who's judging it, and I know this now. Depending on the judging panel, who's going to reward like condition, structure, over size, because judges at the end of the day are human beings, right? And they've all got favorites. We all have the favorites. But certain panels of judges will go for size. Like the European judges, I found, I don't know if that's changed now, will tend to go more for size, where a lot of the Canadian, American shows will be like more conditioned and stuff.
Yeah.
But like Sarah just said there, you know, like there's some big lumps out there, and you're thinking, holy shit, like and you start to think. I even got told one year, after being in the bodybuilding class, I got told, okay, we think you should try women's physique, obviously. And I was like, really? So I was like, okay. So like, you're devastated. I was thinking, oh bollocks, man. So like, I thought, okay, I'll go down the WPD route, try that. Don't train your arms, don't train your legs. But I didn't enjoy my training because I love training all body parts. Anyway, I think it was a 28 round hour trip to Louisiana for my first WPD. I think there was about 32 girls in the lineup or something. So I went on stage and I'd wised up a bit since then. So I was looking at the judges and they didn't even look at me, right? And you can start feeling yourself getting like really peed off on stage. And I'm thinking, I can feel Kay staring at me going, stop it, calm down. And I'm stood there, they're not even looking at me. They haven't even looked at me, right? And I thought, Joe, like I've traveled 28 hours to get here. So afterwards, I asked for the judges' feedback, which I don't normally do. And they said, oh, we think you should go to bodybuilding. Thanks. Thanks for that. One of your colleagues told me my last show I needed to do physique. No, you're not women's physique. You're too thick. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Fuck's sake. Right, okay. So anyway, I learned the hard way. Back home I went, got my head down, and then went back to bodybuilding. So rule number one, never listen to all the judges' opinions.
Yeah, like coming back to like European like judging, I think they still go for more that mass look. Like when I did Alicante, and I don't know whether you found this for your show, Ro, but the woman that came and beat me, she was jacked as fuck. Like I showed some people the pictures and it was like, why is she in physique? She should be in bodybuilding. So I think that very much maybe still stands for European. But again, Ro, you may have had a different kind of take on the judging from your show.
I found, I mean, I'm not like the biggest on stage either, but I bring the condition.
Yeah, but
And
you're big. You've got a big frame.
I'm not. This is the thing. It's like
Wendy's like, you're jacked.
No.
You've got prep head on, right? You're big, okay.
it's more like I'm only like 5'4", and there are wider structures out there, and I mean I've got quite wide clavicles, but then like I'm not very hippie, so I can be quite straight up and down until I actually grew some glutes. But Brigitte, who came second at Empro, I'd say she had more width on me. Backwise wasn't quite as dense, but she also didn't quite have the same condition. I can't really, it's so difficult, isn't it? Like when you're stood next to people kind of thinking, are they, when it comes to actually filling a space, are they a bigger person than me? You're always going to go, yes, they are. You can't see yourself in that way. I find it's really hard to kind of, like I probably just demonstrated. In my head, I'm still a size 8 CrossFitter. And it drives Dan mad because I'll order stuff off the internet and then be like, well, it doesn't fit. And he's like, well, what size did you get? Size 12. He's like, well, no wonder it doesn't fit you. You don't realize how much room you take up until you get on a 9-hour flight, which I'm not looking forward to tomorrow.
Yeah, that's the worst part. That is definitely the worst part ever.
I've refused to sit next to Dan. I booked our seats during the week, and I've booked 2 window seats, one in front of the other, because I was like, I just can't do it. I can't sit like this for 9 hours.
What if you get sat next to somebody who's like really fat and like hangs over the side?
But the fat, you can kind of squidge that out the way. Like it's malleable. It kind of it sort of slots into the grooves. Muscle. Dan's lat and delt just hangs over the armrest, and I end up either having to sit forward for the whole 9 hours or sit kind of at a slant, and then my back goes and I can't pose because I've spent 9 hours shoehorned into a tiny seat next to Dan, who, I mean, he's even bigger than when we went to Ibiza, and that was bad enough. That was like a 3-hour flight, and he's full on off-season mode now. It's just ridiculous.
Hopefully it'll be a quiet flight so you can like chill out and stretch out a bit.
We don't tend to talk to each other much on flights anyway. I watch my iPad for a solid 9 hours. Get up.
No way. See, I'm literally up and down every half hour.
No,
like, I'll see up, down, food, toilet, I get paranoid sitting still.
going for a piss is going to be a pain in the ass because I'm going to have to get 2 people out of the way to do it.
I have to go in the aisle seat because I don't have claustrophobia, but it's almost like I'm over dramatic with like it's like selective claustrophobia, and I swear it's not just me, but on flights like I have to be on that aisle seat
I'm
because
with you on that. Yeah.
I just get like, and there's certain scenarios, however, other scenarios that if I was fully claustrophobic, I'm okay in, but it's that, and then like lifts and stuff are fine. But if I feel like I'm like, I guess squashed in and I'm not in control, like if I needed to get out of
And that's
the,
with people, like, you know, when people is too close, like people you don't know, and you're like, don't touch me, I don't know you. But like, if you know someone, it's all right. But having the aisle seat for me is just like, aisle seat or nothing.
We've spoken about this, Romana, haven't we? Like when you, it's personal space, and I think that, and you summed it up before, Mana, saying like, as bodybuilders, a lot of us are quite introvert, although we can be extrovert with the right people, and that is again, it's like we like who we like, and that personal space is super important. And there's a lot of personalities in bodybuilding that are the same.
It's weird, even like especially in prep. I don't like being touched anyway, but in prep it's even worse to the point where flying to Orlando, even Dan touching me, like it, I just don't like it. It sounds really horrible to, and he knows I've said this to him. It's like I just can't deal with being touched, even by you when I'm on prep. It's like everything is so overstimulated already. But my logic is having the window seat, you've got the slight curvature of the plane, so I can at least kind of shove my delt into that bit and kind of get away from the person I'm sat next to and just bug them when I need the toilet. But yeah, it's going to be fun. It's the heat. That's what triggers my sort of claustrophobic feeling, is the heat and stuffiness, and then you add in like children crying and drunk people.
Children crying, it's awful. Nasty.
When we flew back from Florida, the person I was sat next to, because Dan would always give me the middle seat, he'd have the aisle seat. He'd fall asleep, then get pissy because every time the trolley people like bash him, because hanging over the edge. But the person sat next to the window the whole way back from Florida, that's what, like 8-9 hours. They didn't get up once. They didn't get up. I don't even think I saw them have a drink in 9 hours. They didn't go to the toilet. It was like, what is going on with these people?
Yeah, for sure. Sara, first timer wise, when you get people approach you about a prep, is there anything else, sort of nuggets and things that you give them to decide whether it's right for them as well?
I think I've said before to people, like, make sure you want to do it. Like, don't just follow like the glitz and glam on social media, like we've spoken about like loads of times. Like, just expect for your whole life to change for however long that prep may be, social events, food, going out. Expect it to change and expect it to be hard. I say to people, like, it will be one of the hardest, if not one of the hardest things you'll ever do, but it'll also be one of the most rewarding things you'll ever do, because you'll learn so much about how far you can push yourself, like mentally and physically. Like, the stuff that I've learned about myself doing preps is ridiculous. Like, how far I can physically push myself, like, to embrace things outside of prep, be sort of more kind of, be in the moment a little bit more and things like that. And I think that's what I'd mainly say to first time is be prepared to work hard and be prepared to give it everything, because if you don't, then it will be so much harder. But again, like coming back to what Wendy said, like communication with coaches, make sure you're surrounded by people that are going to benefit you, instead of like just be like, oh, what are you doing this for? Like, that's just, you don't need that negative environment around you, because it is just something that you just don't need. And you want that positive reinforcement around you to be like, yeah, actually, you know what, I'm going to get ready for a show. Yeah, let's absolutely, I'll be by your side the whole time. Like, you know what I mean? Because again, like Wendy said, it is such a unique thing to be going through with partners or with friends. They need to understand how much of, how much this sport does take from you when it comes to prep time. So that's one of my biggest things. Is also make sure you have the finances to do it, because a lot of people come into bodybuilding think it's cheap as fuck, and it's not. Whether you're amateur, you know. So again, have those finances there, because you'll either be rinsed by the end of it or slightly higher than not being super rinsed, a little bit more rinsed. Do you know what I mean? So finances, make sure you have a financial like backing for you, like have some money put away for it, because if you don't, then it's just going to make it an even more stressful experience.
And it's all phases as well, isn't it? I think sometimes, I guess in the prep, it's like you get your bikini, all of these different things that are for the show, and then your check-ins on the lead up. But then, you know, in off season, you're eating more, or it might be that you need more supplements off the back of the prep, or additional things that occur in the off season as well. And certainly there is, when people are doing this as a one-off challenge as such, you know, I want to step on stage, I want to do that, and that's something I want to achieve, and then come away from it. Maybe there's not that thought process after as to the finances after it as well.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, yeah, I think it's, like I said, it will be one of the hardest, but one of the most rewarding things that you will do. And I say to people, like, when you're getting through the hard days, the minute you step on stage, whether that be 5 minutes or 10 minutes, it's going to be the best experience of your life, because you know that you've given everything to it. And I had the same conversation with someone the other day. Like, it's going to be hard, but it's going to be so much fun when you get on stage, because it's a lot of fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so, like we've said before, and it's not trying to be callous or being dickheads about it, but if you're not gunning for that, like you say, it might only be 5 minutes, you're pouring all of this into that time on stage, you want to fucking rinse it, right? Like, this
Absolutely.
is your time. And back to what you were all saying earlier about the comparison, and you know, you get to the show, and maybe you've spent so long looking on Instagram at everyone else is going to be there, and then, you know, on the day, and all of those things, it truly does detract away from, you're there to own it, right? Like, this is such, I can't, you know, you can see how my tone goes up here and I get excited about it, but it's like, you know, if you're not going to enjoy that experience, there's a certain degree of, you know, why are you putting yourself through that to get there? Now, I know nerves take over, and particularly first timers, I get nervous still now after 12 years of it, because we care. But there's a difference, isn't there? It's like, as soon as you get on that stage, you've got to switch that shit on, you know?
Yeah, I'd say it's like to a lot of people about individual presentations or eye walks or whatever it may be. Like, when I first started competing, especially in the pro ranks, like, I would rush through my individual presentation. But when I did Texas last year, I rinsed the fuck out of it. Until you tell me to get off stage, I will stay on stage and your eyes will be on me the whole time, because I think you work so hard, make the most of it. So I always say to people, chill out, go through it slowly, like, show the judges, show them what you're about, and then when you're ready, finish and leave the stage. If they think you're going and taking the piss, then they'll tell you to get off. That's fine, just get off. I mean,
you can't hear.
yeah. Right, get off the stage. No, I'm not done, you know.
That actually happened to me, you know, and yeah,
Nice one.
I generally can hear them.
Yeah.
When you go on pro level, you go and you do your compulsories by yourself, don't you?
Yeah.
I went on and I was like giving it rock hard, because I love being on stage. Right? I never used to get nervous at all, and I had to go through it all. And then it was only like till about, I must have gone well over my minute. They must have said, Wendy. I was like, carrying on like there it was. Wendy can get off now. That's it. And then in the end, Bob Chickarell had to get on the microphone and said, okay, thank you, Wendy McCready. I was like, oh, sorry. And I thought I was going to get marked down for it. I was like paranoid, but I still love being on stage. And a lot of the girls I competed with used to get proper stressed, like backstage and stuff. And they used to laugh at me because I was that annoying little British girl who used to bob around, like hyping everyone up and that. And I said, what are you nervous for? I was like, this is what we've worked for. Like, we might as well go out and enjoy it. We're not like going to fight to the death against each other, you know? It's like not our.
Not gladiators.
Yeah, exactly. And even though it kind of you are, but like, but you're not. Like, you're in the same boat, aren't you?
Smashing each other in the face or anything, oh yeah.
Well, that's the thing, I know, and I've got, so like some of my best friends, I compete with the same bunch for a long time, and we stay in touch now. We fly out to each other's house, but like back then, it's like you have your game face on before pre-judging. I'm like, how am I? And I was like, it's here to enjoy ourselves, like lighting up and stuff, and people did, but they got so nervous, and then it's like it takes it away. So, and now, oh, do you want to get it over with? Do you want to get it over with? I'm like, hang on a minute, you've spent 6 months, 5 months killing yourself, and you want to get it over with. Like, this is your time, it's your moment. Just like go, like say, like Sarah said, like rinse the hell out of it, get up there and enjoy it, because it's too short, you know.
I remember having this conversation with Faye Simone back in Alicante, and she was like bobbling around, loving life. She was such a vibe because she just wanted to be there. because I didn't even know she was going to be there until I met her in Alicante, and she was just like, yeah, I'm just kind of here just for the crack, like I don't really mind what happens. And she was just so nice backstage because we were just there like chilling, and I think, you know, yes, get the game face on, but just have a laugh, like have some fun, like, you know.
Yeah, it's all about. I mean, we had a really nice bond that like the lasses I used to compete, like Helly Trevino, Robin Hills, Kimber. We always used to help each other pump up. Like we used to like give each other food, and like we used to bring presents. They used to message me all the way through prep. How you doing your cardio? I am doing my cardio. Can you bring some of those jammy dodgers over from the UK? And like some Jaffa cakes. And I was like, we'd swap food and that. And that's how it was in the end. It was really nice. But then there was like the odd few would be like really serious, and we're like, but a lot of times because we're nervous, and it's like you don't like it's cool. We're all the same. Like there's not that many of us really. Like stick together and help each other, you know. And even now to this day, I say we should all just try and help each other. Like there's too much bitchiness and for me and drama and stuff. Like if we all just helped each other and support each other, like it'd be like a lot easier, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Spoken before about being inspired by the people you stand on stage with as well, and maybe that comes more with when you do pursue the ranks, but you can still, you know, even when I first came second at a show, I'd come first and then the next show I came second, and the girl that beat me, I was like, incredible physique, and I was, you know, then when I'm moving forward in the growth phase and what have you, it's like, wow, you know, that's something that can inspire me, because I really liked how she looked and her physique, and I could see that she'd won for a reason. And it's reframing that sometimes, rather than this sort of envy, and we can't be someone else. And I think that that's important as well. You know, no matter how many people you look at on social media, no matter how many people you compete against, you're never gonna be someone else. However, you can use this as fuel and think, you know, wow, this person's got a really cool physique, if you know what I mean.
Envy is the thief of joy.
Yeah, for
Or
sure.
like that.
It's, you know, it's that you can either take that emotion and make it negative and be envious, or like you said, Sarah, it's flipping it on its head and using it in a positive manner and being aspirational. Like, okay, they beat me, she beat me, but that they look fantastic. So instead of being like, oh fuck's sake, they're such a bitch, they beat me, it's like they're wicked. I want to look like them so they don't beat me again. But just trying to like, yeah, be more positive with it, I
I
guess.
don't know if you've ever heard of Cathy LaFrancois, when she was married to Lee Priest. She was one of the top pros. Which she was one of my heroes. Like she was I had her up here before I turned pro. In the programs and bought a DVD and all of this. And eventually I competed against her in Connecticut, and I ended up beating her. And I was so upset because I beat her, and I was like, how can you even beat a hero? I was stood next to her on stage because her surname was P, mine was M. So I was stood next to her, and I was thinking, oh my God, I'm stood next to my hero. And I had no idea what the judges were like at the time. I was just thinking I'm stood next to Cathy Priest. And in the end, I ended up beating, and I was like, wow, like what now then? And I was like, I was actually quite upset because I'd beat one of my heroes. I was like, oh my God. But like it was crazy. And again, she was really quiet. She was actually, for as famous as she was like so nervous, very quiet. She was French Canadian, so her English wasn't the best. And she was just like a really nice person. We kept in touch after that. But yeah, she was quite not insecure, but she was just very shy. I think people don't realize that with bodybuilders, like because we look like what we do, everyone assumes that we're like really confident and stuff, and a lot of people are, but there's also quite a lot who aren't. And when you actually chat to them in person, it's like, oh wow, I didn't realize you're going to be like that, you know.
Yeah. Because sometimes getting into bodybuilding, it is through sort of, you know, trauma or insecurities, or, you know, being bullied, things like this, you know, body confidence, and that doesn't just disappear, does it? And of course it's the pursuit of progression. This is what we're always trying to do, progress. And then it's like you maybe don't notice how much you've progressed as well yourself. And it's certainly important to touch base with yourself and check in with yourself. And this is where I think it's cool, you know, when you're working with an online coach. And I often reference in when I'm doing check-ins, it's like every week you're reflecting on things that you could do better or improve, or things that are harder. But you also go, actually, what did I do well? I know, sorry, you call them like silver linings, don't you? It's like, what have I actually done this week? And, you know, for the listeners, when you're a bodybuilder, you're doing these things every fucking day. You are investing in yourself day in, day out. And we forget about that because we suddenly feel like everyone's doing it. Everyone's, you know, everyone's maybe better than us or whatever. We can always be better. But not many of the, like, when we look at the whole world, the population, right? Not many people are actually doing this thing, but we forget about that.
And that's important, like, to actually celebrate your own wins and actually acknowledge what you've achieved. Because I think when you're in, like, I suppose, Sara and Romana, you're probably in that space now where you're happy, but you're not good enough and you keep striving. You won't say, and trust me, right? When you come off retirement stage, whenever that is, you look back and you'll think, oh, actually did all right. And you get quite proud of yourself. But if I can just say, just appreciate how far you've come now and how well you look, because trust me, it goes so quick. And I'd give my left arm to be still competing again now. Well, I wouldn't send that, throw my symmetry off, but
Be realistic here.
yeah, but just like, be proud of yourself for what you're doing now, because I know we're never happy. We always want to pursue the next. I mean, as soon as that show was finished, I would always focus on the next one, like, and not really give myself enough time to appreciate how well I've done. And it's always the next one, always the next one. And one day that stops. And then it's like, oh, fuck. Like, so, like, give yourself enough credit for where you are now, because there's not many of you. So,
yeah, we're a dying breed, us big uns.
yeah. Don't make them like they used to.
Yeah, yeah. How long were you in the scene for? When's like how long was your competitive career?
30 years.
30 years. That's a beast.
I did my first show when I was, well, I started training when I was 17. I did my first show when I was 19. I did my last show 2019 in Romania. So, and when I turned pro, there was only America we could compete in. There was no European shows at all. And it was only my last 2 years then Romania came out. So then I did Romania as my last show.
And we bitch now, Sara.
Yeah, yeah.
So
just show.
Think yourselves lucky. My first pro show was in Texas. I don't even know how I got there to this day. Like, I don't know, especially like pre-Kate, because Kate organized everything, like flights and stuff. So I have no idea. I even say it now, like when she organizes holidays, how did I even get to Texas by myself, or Florida, or wherever else? I've got no idea. I don't know.
You're lucky
food and stuff, because food is so stressful. Like then, like, it's different now because you can have prep companies and there's supermarkets doing stuff, but getting your food through customs and stuff, like getting food taken off you, walking around. I remember one time, I think it was 2007, we were walking around Atlantic City in my flip-flops looking for somewhere that sold chicken, because we had to like get rid of all our food at the airport, and that was it, no more food. So where do we go? And I don't know my way around Atlantic City. So there I was asking strangers in this Hispanic suburb, where sells chicken? And we all had to share one microwave because there was no microwave to go around in the hotel room. So all of us were in a queue to cook chicken from raw in a microwave.
Oh,
And that's what we had to do. Think
And
yourself
actually,
lucky.
you talking about foods actually started getting me like, oh my God, what if they take my cream of rice off me tomorrow?
They can't take a cream of ice off you. It'll just be, if it depends what you do. We wised up in the end, and then we just used to not declare it. But it depends who's on the security, doesn't it? It depends how you get in.
I remember when I flew to my pro debut in Poland, and this was 2021 September, so it was like literally tail end of COVID stuff. And we'd all been shut away for however long. And yeah, again, that was like, thinking back on it now, I have no idea. And that was on my own. I went completely alone, just like I think I flew from Luton or something ridiculous. Just like the drive to the airport was longer than the flight to Poland. And yeah, just no idea where I was going. How I managed that, no idea. But
it's weird, but you just knew,
now I've got Dan with me. I mean, even though he's got a master's degree in geography, he can't navigate his way out of a paper bag. It's ridiculous. Like, I'll still be the one telling him, right, no, you need to go this way for Heathrow. Follow the signs for Heathrow. I remember we were going down to Bournemouth during the Olympia prep, and we'd got as far as Harlow, which is literally less than an hour from us. Stopped at the services for the toilet, and he started going the wrong way up the M11, so heading back towards Suffolk because he took a wrong turning at the roundabout. It's like, we're on our doorstep. How have you got lost already?
You two are literally the best.
It is easy done, though. It is easy done.
For sure, especially when we're heightened in prep. Now, I also wanted to ask all of you, because I feel like it's super important. What we've noticed, girls, from doing these roundtables is that it is inspiring for people that are starting out, or even that are, you know, a few years into their journey, to hear about not only, as we've said, the highlights, but the struggles that we can face. And I thought this would be quite a good sort of talking point to reach out to the listeners and you know, give them hope as well if they're struggling with anything, about the hardest period of time you've had as a bodybuilder, if there was, you know, anything that really helped you get through that, or, you know, what caused it to be a hard time. And Wendy, have you got any sort of pivotal moments for yourself where you have really had to push through a tough spot as a bodybuilder?
How long have you got?
Yeah, I know. And this is very inspirational for people. And I do feel that people do reach out and they go, do you know, they're seeing someone that's the longest standing IFBB Pro and going through this, and maybe thinking that, you know, it's something that just smoothly goes through, you know.
It's far from smooth. And so if the biggest thing for me is I've always had a bad back. And when I say a bad back, everyone's got a bad back, right? But I was born with dislocated hips, and I was never meant to do this. So, but me being me, I fell upon this sport because I used to do karate martial arts, and I was on the England team for that, but I was so skinny, I was so light, and I used to get like my nose broke and stuff. And they said, if you don't go to the gym and get stronger, then you're going to end up getting like really hurt. So like, okay, off the gym I went. But I fell in love with training. And then when I was 16, 17, I had my first like low back incident. My mum's got the same thing. So anyway, long story short, over time, I ended up with herniated discs, and then my discs like disappeared. So that's why I retired in the first place. I only have one disc left in my lower spine. So over the years, as I trained, my training, I couldn't sometimes move. I used to have to get Kate to put my shoes on, my socks on, and it was really like soul destroying. And I was prepping, and I was like, I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up. And I never told anyone. I didn't even tell my fellow competitors till my last show in Romania, and they just broke down and said, I can't believe it, all this. Like, I don't want any sub stories. I just didn't want any sympathy or for the judges to know. But it used to cause me all kinds of like pain issues. Some days I couldn't stand up, but then I knew I had to go and do legs. I know it sounds really stupid now, but in looking back, I thinking, well, I'm just being absolutely nuts. But in my head, I sort of do. So I'll always find a way, whether that, you know, you just do. So anyway, over the years, my spine degenerated, and I think it was my last show. No, sorry, when I was on the way to Chicago, actually. So I was looking really good. I was going off to Chicago. So we had to get the train from Darlington to Manchester. We were staying overnight in Manchester to fly out to Chicago. And there we were, train comes in, I've got my little case, and like, case, it gets excited, the show always does. And train's in when, like, okay, coming. And I'm pulling my case, and my back went like completely, and it just totally locked up. And this is on the train station. And she's like, come on, the train's coming. And I was like, I can't move. And she's like, what do you mean? Oh, she said, you're back. I was like, I said, I literally can't move. So we had to get the steward to put my case on, in the whole train journey down to Manchester. Like, I can't describe it. It was just, I couldn't, every bump, you know, it's like on the train, it's like, and I was like, I can't do this. So we got to Manchester eventually. And then luckily, one of my friends who, when I was sponsored by CMP, he was a physio, he lived in Manchester. He came out to the hotel, he did some acupuncture on me, just so I could get through the flight the next day. And he said, right, when you're going to have to take painkillers, I don't take painkillers, because for me it just masked the pain, so I would do even more damage. So I was like, oh, okay. So got some painkillers, got on the flight the next morning, and I was sat there and I said, okay, I'm going to be sick. He said, and the flight was just about to go off. You know, when you start with your seatbelt on, you're like, you have to stay there. And I was like, I'm going to be safe. He said, you can't be safe. I said, I'm going to be safe. He said, if you get off and go to the toilet now, we're not going anywhere. I was like, right, okay. And how I kept, that's I'm discussing, but how I kept that in, I don't know. As soon as the seatbelt sign went off, I kind of hobbled my way to the toilet and spent the whole 9 hours to Chicago and literally just throwing up. And this was meant to be my carb up day as well.
Oh no.
It was really like 3 days. We used to front load, so like I think it was like 3 days. So that was the longest journey of my entire life. That was awful. And then we get to Chicago. You know what it's like. You have to go to Walmart, get all your bits and bobs. And I was pushing the trolley around, like barely being able to put like one foot in front of the other. I couldn't flex my glutes, couldn't flex my quads. I was messaging John and I was like, I can't eat anything. What am I supposed to do? My whole rationale went out of my head. And again, long story short, one boy with the ins and outs, but I remember pumping up backstage and I was in so much pain. I couldn't tense anything. But when I went on stage, like, I don't know what happened. There was 26, 27 on stage. I ended up coming second anyway. But I remember in between, I thought I was going to pass out backstage and like no one knew. So I kept a breath. Still my smiles on the pictures. Like, oh, she looks really good. She looks happy. Inside, I was like, that was awful. And that was absolute agony. And I just think I broke down afterwards. Just because of sheer pain. That was absolutely awful. So that was probably my worst thing ever. But then on my last show, 2 weeks before I competed my last show, my surgeon showed me the scan. He said, you've only got one disc left in your lower spine, and if you do anything else, you're probably going to end up in a wheelchair. And that's not what I wanted to hear before 2 weeks out from my last show. And she's like, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm here now. I might as well do it. She said, but what if you qualify for the Olympia? I was like, well, I'm doing it. So universe has a funny way of working out, doesn't it? So as it happened, I didn't qualify for the Olympia, which looking back is probably a good thing because I would have done it. And that's how I retired. So yeah, my journey has been a very painful one, but also and a very, very challenging one, but a rewarding one as well. And it's like these things might make you stronger. There's other things as well, but they're the main ones that stick out to my head. But
yeah, I think when you've got that strong why, isn't it? Like you really want to do this. It's so important to you. We can push through so much. Like you say, when you look back, you're like, I mean, how did I do that? You know, it's wild.
I don't know. And probably looking back, it wasn't the brightest thing to do. But I suppose when you're in that zone, you just do, don't you? It's like
I think your era of bodybuilding, when they're just a different breed, like completely. Like some of the stories you hear from some of the open bodybuilders, some of like the women's bodybuilders and stuff, like some of the injuries people endured, they were just like, just throw some dirt in it and just get on with it. Like that era of bodybuilding is just, whereas some people be like, I've got a scratch on my arm, can't go to the gym today. Whereas like you literally have one disc in your lower back and you still trained. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was difficult. And my one disc that's left, it compresses on a root nerve as well. So I used to driving for me and sitting still is like driving was the worst. And I used to travel. It used to take me 50 minutes to get to max muscle, 50 minutes back each day. And the driving probably was the worst part. So I'd drive back and I'd get out of the car like this, and Ant was like, "Are you all right, McCready?" I was like, I'm fine, as you do. And we would train legs, kill myself doing legs, could barely walk, and then get back in the van. And then I'd literally hobble in and then think, when I was doing prep, I think, fuck, I've got my cardio to do now. Right, okay, like to get my head around this. But and then one year, I'm going off on tangent now, sorry. I spent one time on prep in hospital. That's induce a coma on me during the prep. Because I have reactive hypoglycemia. Romana probably knows all about this stuff. And they wanted to see what brought it on, how low they could get me before it happened, and blah blah. I wasn't allowed to eat or drink, and I was in a hospital for like 3 days solid with no food, no nothing. And I had to get Kate to smuggle in some caffeine-free Diet Coke so I could have something. And then when the nurses could go out, I'd try and do some stairs up and down the stairway. But yeah, that wasn't a very pleasant experience either.
We do a lot of bodybuilders, like you say, sorry, it's certainly changed over the years. Even from when we started out, there is different mentalities, and I certainly believe that social media is a lot to do with that, how it is shown as this sort of highlighter and what the good parts to it, for sure. And there are so many good parts. We've already spoken about that, but you don't see the dark side to it, as it were, and what goes into it when you take it very seriously. And I guess it's a bit of a tricky one, you know, if someone does want to do this as a challenge and that's something that makes them feel really proud and they want to, you know, do it as that one-off, as I mentioned earlier, you don't want to take away from it, but it is different to perhaps what bodybuilding was when it sort of started and where it went. But, you know, social media is to blame for a lot of things, but we wouldn't know each other without it. So
it has its good points as well. Like, don't get me wrong, there's too many people out there who it's quite dangerous. Like, you can put their opinions and advice on, and they don't actually know what they're talking about. But it's got a lot of positives as well. Like you say, like we wouldn't have been able to do this or keep in touch with people across the world. Like, it does have its good points as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Then
So
you choose who to follow, don't you? You do choose who you follow. You choose who you look at. You're the one who controls who you scroll them down. If you don't like them, get rid of them.
yeah, for sure. We talk about this, don't we, girls? It's like you can just mute or block people. I think sometimes I've certainly had it myself where I'd like want to block someone, but I'm like, can I touch the button? Like, what's gonna happen if I block them? And they don't even fucking know. Don't even know. Now,
The
sorry.
world will keep on spinning if you block that person.
Yep.
Sorry,
Oh.
you've had some treatment in your back recently, haven't you? Where Wendy's spoken about her back pain.
Yeah, so I've just from powerlifting, it's just been like I've just had notoriously bad hips and shit like that. And I went to I was rowing the other day and it just was typical that we can row and then we pick up something from the floor and that's when it goes. And I was like in so much pain. I had to have 4 days off the gym. I couldn't really walk or anything like that. And then I actually went and had some electrotherapy done on my lower back, which is obviously it's like acupuncture, but you run a electrical current through the needles. And it was an absolute game changer. I think my pain went from like an 8 to 10 to like a 1 out of 10, and I'm perfectly fine now, touch wood. So like obviously mix that with a little bit of rehab here and there. It was just an amazing experience. I'm very lucky to be sponsored by a guy called Ash from COA Performance in Cheltenham. And, you know, I've been going to him for 1-2 years. So he's seen me through every phase. He's seen me through prep, seen me through fucking off season, seen me at heaviest, at my lightest. And that treatment alone was brilliant. And yeah, it's just, if you have the chance to go and have like electrical stimulation therapy, it makes such a difference.
We do just accrue these injuries as well, or it can be most of my injuries are before bodybuilding, and then you know over the years when you bodybuild, it's
I think a lot of the issues just like accrued over time when I was powerlifting, because I was like squatting heavy like 4 times a week, deadlifting 4 times. Like it was just like competitive, like heavy loads across time. I had a really nasty bout of like piriformis syndrome in both my glutes, like, and it just stopped like my glutes firing well, and then it just kind of spiraled out of there. And it's just like little tiny things that need to be changed nowadays. But like I think it is just the constant pummeling our bodies get when we're, you know, lifting things that we shouldn't be lifting and stuff like that. Like, you know, I'm 5'3", and the weight that we put through our spines and our body every day, like, do you know what I mean? And we shouldn't be holding muscle like this. Like it's just, I think, an accruement of things, isn't it, over time?
Yeah.
But it's also what I've learned as well. This is really interesting. What I've learned over the years as well is it's not just the physical stuff that we get injuries from. Like a massive thing now is the stored emotional trauma, which I've learned a lot from. So everyone has trauma. So, but when we store it and we don't deal with that trauma, it comes out in our physical, and that is so true.
Last year, when I've probably had PTSD from the ambulance service and other bits and bobs I was in the ambulance service 20 years, and I can think back to some of the flashbacks I was having. It was back to like the first year that I was working onwards. And the thing that would make the symptoms and the anxiety worse with how the psychological would manifest in my physiological. So it would be things like my hands would shake, my hands were sweaty, my traps were tight, my neck was tight. I'm trying to train or trying to breathe during cardio, and my neck was the muscles in my chest and my neck were just getting tight, making it feel like it was hard to breathe. And it was like I knew that I was breathing absolutely fine, but mid-set or mid-cardio, it would get even worse. And then one of the gyms I was training at last year for my cardio, just a pure gym, was around the corner from the house. It was right next to the ambulance service control room where I worked, but was off sick at the time. And there'd be other members of staff coming in to train, and even just seeing them, and it was like this battle in my head about the perception of me being off sick with PTSD, but then still being in the gym and how that would be perceived by people at work. And it would just make that anxiety even worse. Lying in bed at night, my heart was pounding, felt like I couldn't breathe. And then actually having the flashbacks and the triggers themselves, where I just end up hugging my knees on the bedroom floor. It like, I really cannot stress how much psychological symptoms can manifest physiologically and how you don't realize the impact of that. Like even now, if I get a little bit anxious about something, my hands will start going, my forearms will get tight, and I'm sort of like little T-Rex. Dan can see it because I'll be there holding my phone, just scrolling through Instagram, and my hands, like, I'm exaggerating it now, but it's literally shaking like this, trying to tight. Oh, it was just, yeah. Not fun.
When you're stressed, you crunch in, like your spine builds in, as in you go in fight or flight mode, right? Don't you?
Yeah.
So, and then your spine like tenses up, and everything tenses up, and even things like disease, illness, people who get run down all the time, it's all emotional trauma that you haven't dealt with. And as bodybuilders, we ignore those emotions.
Yeah.
I know I did. Like you switch off, we become like usually now, like you've been robot board. You'll just do what's said to do. Like, especially when you obviously take like PEDs as well, you become even more like, put that to back of your mind, doesn't matter, stop being so weak. And you just focus on the job at hand, which is what we all do. But in that time, we're squashing down all these emotions, not dealing with them, and our body will over time, it'll tell you. And that's what happens. And until I dealt with my stress, then my physique changed completely. And even now, my back is like, I'm not saying like K's Jesus or anything, but like my back and my shoulder, I've had shoulder operation, I've got 2 tears. I've never felt so good in 6 years, 7 years. I can squat again. I've never been able to squat for years. Like, and that's all because I've dealt with what's going on. It's horrible. It's uncomfortable because we're not roughy, tufty bodybuilders, but like, it's hard. But I'm so pleased.
I feel like as well, as bodybuilders on this pursuit, sometimes it doesn't feel like there's time to deal with the trauma. Like you say there, you know, it's like there's always another goal. There's always something coming up. Even if you're in off season, you know, some people think it's just prep that's hard or you're going to face challenges, but it's off season as well. And certainly as well, like you say there, it's like until I've had to step away from stage for a longer period of time this time, and that's been so fucking hard to accept that. But it was because of, you know, dealing with injuries, chronic back pain like yourself, Wendy, and working on my health markers. I've actually been able to deal with trauma from, you know, years and years and years ago. And I feel so different. Like it's this elation every day that I'm happy in myself. But I don't feel like I sort of had time to do that as a bodybuilder because I was just in this suffering mode. And it's like, no, I'm not weak, like you saying. And when am I going to unearth this trauma? Because I can't, because I've got these boxes to tick. I've got so much to do, and it's incredibly hard at times.
But your psychological health is just as an important box to tick as your physical, like as your physique is. I was having this conversation during the week. It's like you're constantly trying to progress your physique. You also need to constantly be trying to progress your mind. Like going through the rewind therapy I had last year, whilst I mean, I waited until it was after Empro that I started the rewind therapy, and I'm glad I waited until I had some food in me because it was really mentally challenging. But was so crucial to actually take the time to do it, and it was uncomfortable, and it wasn't fun, and I felt ball bagged afterwards. But it made such a difference to my life after that because I mean the flashbacks have massively reduced, and I'm not as up here when I am triggered or when I do have a flashback. It's much more manageable. because they were so debilitating. And it's so important to take that time out. It's like, if you have time at the end of the day to sit on the sofa and watch Netflix, surely you can move that time around so that you can work on your mental health at some point during the day if you really want to progress. Because if you don't take that time, you're never going to change. You're never going to get sort of any mental clarity and get better if you don't actually work on it. It's not just going to magically disappear one day. You need to be as adamant with what you're trying to do with your brain as you are with your body.
It's allowing that progression, isn't it, as well? It's like, if something really set you back, I actually did a story on this not long ago. If something normally sends you to an 8 out of 10, absolutely, you know, anxious, a really, you know, really hard scenario, if you then revisit it and you have worked on your mindset, your mental health, perhaps with your coach, etc., and you revisit that, and maybe it's a 5 to 6 out of 10, that's progress. It doesn't mean that if you do work on your own mental health and your mindset, that suddenly you're stronger and everything's going to be a breeze. There's still things that can trigger you, or, you know, feel very uncomfortable. But it's if you've improved how you feel in that scenario as well, rather than thinking, you know, like, that's going to be fine now. I've worked on that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process for sure. Definitely. It's also been like true to yourself. Because I think especially when you're competing and stuff, we believe we're invincible. We think, like I say, we're robots. We just switch on. We believe we're like warriors, and I know I did, like gladiators, like nothing's gonna get in. But when you actually stop and sit with yourself and think, am I really okay? And like, and you know you're not, but it's okay. I've got another show to do, and you haven't got room to have that in your head. But when you do make that room, and yes, like man said, it gets really uncomfortable. Then once you get through that, you think, wow, now we feel like 10 pounds lighter. It's like, it makes a massive difference. Massive difference. When we were talking before about how you love being on stage and stuff like that, there was only one time I absolutely hated being on stage, and that was when I wasn't dealing with anything, and I'd qualified for the Rising Phoenix. It was the second year in a row, and because I'd done so well the previous year, I had a lot of expectation to do even better. But within that, my dog, who was my best friend and my cardio buddy, I lost my nan, I lost my job, I lost my sponsorship. But I'd signed the contract to do it, so I had to go out to Arizona to do it, and I didn't want to be there, and it showed on stage. I got bitten by a spider in the desert as well, so my whole leg, like, I remember Alina Popper was in there. She was like P, so she was stood next to me in the lineup, and she said, "Wendy," she says, "your leg." I was like, "It's all right, didn't worry, man." I said, "We'd be all right," and she said, "No, no, no, no," and she's like, and she got some medic to come and give me some whatever she gave me. I don't know, I had it. But my whole like shin was like just one big watery blob. But it didn't matter anyway, because I look like crap, and I'd done everything, probably trained even harder, because I was so like, I refused to admit that I was anything wrong with me, but I was so stressed. My body was like just not allowing me to do anything. And it was until I went through all that process with Kay and talked it all out and did some like techniques that she uses. And then the following year I came back and I'm different again.
Yeah.
Like, your body just shows you. And that was probably the only time I hate being on stage. But yeah, one of those things.
It's where it's having that partner as well. And Sara, you always say about your partner, you know, what she gives to you as an athlete and a person, and how that has, you know, impacted your journey so much. And that's back to where we started, you know, the communication with your partner. We've all said, and we're all extremely lucky and blessed to have the partners we do, because it sounds like we're all of a similar nature in regards to what we get from that. But even if they're not into bodybuilding, it can be that shared journey as well, and that really does help, because they're the one you're going to go to, aren't they? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, my partner's obviously been in sport herself, but like the understanding that she has of psychology is ridiculous, because it's something that she, one, is really interested in, and two, working as a coach herself in football and multiple sports, and with young people, older people, male, female, the understanding of psychology and how even like working with different learning capabilities, like some child may not be able to learn the way that this other child does or whatever, like just learning how to help people in different ways is massive, and understanding how someone's mind works and being able to put things in place. Like I personally like it when someone is upfront with me, so if someone says to me, you need to do more, you're being a lazy fuck, like that for me is like, okay, I need to pick myself up and sort something out. And that's what Lita does, is because if she knows how to work my mind, she'd be like, you need to stop being a little bitch and just sort yourself out. And I like that. And that's just the way that we work, because when we're backstage together, we're a team. We're not partners, we're a team, like, because that's just how it works, and that's how it's always been. She coached me for a few years when I played football, so she very much understands like how I can apply myself, and vice versa. Like, I hope to think that I get the best out of her when she's working, and it's just the support that we have, and the communication that we have, and have had that for 9 years now. So absolutely.
So important that it is that, like Matt says, I pull him up appropriately. So sometimes I'm like you say, it's like I'm like, why did you say that, or like, why have you done that, because it goes against you as a person, like what. And he's like, oh, I didn't realize I was doing it. But it is certainly that I see as such a benefit in a partnership, where you can just call them out. You're not being a dick to them, you're just saying, yeah, and it brings out the best for sure. And we do need that level head in our minds, particularly when we're at that tail end of a prep and we're like, can somebody have a voice of reason here?
Yeah. Romana's like, yeah.
Romana's right in that.
Oh,
To be fair, the rationality side of my brain, without being so on the ceiling with anxiety and PTSD symptoms, I'm a lot more rational this prep. But it's like Dan will, if I need it, he will be that voice of reason, and I'll do it for him as well. I remember, what was it? He doesn't get on well with MPP at all. And I think when we were out in Florida, that was gear-wise, that was all he could get his hands on. And he'd been without anything for like 10 days or something, and managed to get hold of this MPP, so he pinned it. And literally woke up the next day and he's like, I don't think I want to be a bodybuilder anymore. It's like, now remember, what did you do yesterday? You pinned MPP, and it's like having to talk that through with him. So it is good to have that like ability to kind of pull the other person back. And it's important to me that it works both ways. I don't want to be, especially after last year, I felt I was relying on Dan a lot to kind of soothe me and help me rationalize. And it sounds horrible to say I want to be able to do it for him if he needs it, but it's important that he's able to show that vulnerability as well.
Absolutely.
100%. It's a two-way street, isn't it? Now, before we wrap up, Wendy, I've got to ask you the question. I've asked these two before. So if you could rewind back to when you first started bodybuilding, knowing what you know now, whether you'd listen or not, we don't know, but what would you tell your younger self before you started out? I love asking this question.
It's always a hard one, isn't it?
I wouldn't change much, to be honest, but I would just say stay true to yourself. Follow your path, and which I did. I was very lucky, as in I did do that. I remember my first coach said, if I have a dream, that's it. And don't let anyone stop anyone. Because it's your dream, it's your life, you have to live it. And if you have a passion, if you have a dream, you'll upset yourself more and regret if you don't do it. So if you want something, go and get it. Never give up, ever.
Never give up, my favorite saying. What a sentiment. Well, of course, ladies, thank you so much for our episode today. We're going to wish Mana, well, actually, I don't like wishing good luck, because you've done the fucking work.
No, don't wish luck, because it's not luck.
The hard work is done officially.
It's
no more.
Smash it.
Show them.
No more 75 minutes of cardio.
Yeah, beast.
Just rinse every fucking moment for us. We're there.
You'll have a really good time, right? Because it's Lender's show, isn't it? Lender's show.
Yeah,
Say
it was the
hello to
one
them.
thing I said to Dan. It was like, placing wise, it will be what it will be. The one thing I want from this prep is to not wish it away like I did the Olympia prep, because I'd just been dieting for so long, and then with the PTSD symptoms on top of that, I was fried mentally and physically. So the whole aim of this prep was to do the prep and enjoy the process. And actually, enjoy the prospect of going to compete, whereas last year it was just something that triggered anxiety through the roof, the thought of leaving the home at all. So I'm actually excited. I mean, I'm dreading the 9 hours, but I'm excited about the traveling tomorrow and being away from home, which is, yeah, thinking back to last year, I didn't think I'd be in this position. So
Don't
that to
even
me,
think about last year, just think about this weekend.
Yeah.
it's just a win in itself to be the day before flying and being like, yes, I'm excited, not an anxious mess.
Yeah. It's amazing.
So is there a stream that we can watch it on?
Yeah, there's definitely an Atlanta one. I put it up. It's on their Instagram page.
Okay.
I did put it on my story a few days ago, but I think it's one of the topper. It's one of the top posts. There we go. I'll
Nice.
speak on their story, on their feed.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
That's exciting.
this time we can't wait to. I mean, obviously this episode is going to go live and this show would have occurred. However, it's important for us to know where you're at and that you have the best time. So thank you all of you for today. What a vibe.
Absolutely.
One more thing, boss.
Do it.
I'm in the well, I should be finished. I'm in the process of writing a book.
Oh,
Hope
That's
to have it finished within the next couple of months.
That's really exciting.
Like
That's exciting.
everything,
what's it called?
there's always a way.
Ooh, love it.
So it's from when I was literally like a biography from when I was born and everything that's I've gone through. And stuff.
Wow,
Yeah. And
that'll be a good read.
no truths in there, which I can say now.
I love that. So listeners, keep an eye out for that as well. I will put your Instagram in the description and the girls. And of course, if anyone wants to follow it on their story or, post, share the love, message us. We're always here, our people. And remember, we're all coaches in the space as well. So if you pick up the vibe, then you know where we are. But thank you, ladies, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, guys.
Bye. Bye.
Hey.